Is Snowpiercer a post-apocalyptic sequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Another day, another fan theory. Honestly, they're one of my favorite things to dissect on this show because they're the result of people overthinking something so much that it creates an entirely new and unforeseen way to analyze some of our favorite stories. Now, some, like Varys being a secret merman, are patently ridiculous. That's right, a merman! But others are so crazy, they just might work. Case in point, the idea that Korean filmmaker Bong Joon-ho's sci-fi thriller Snowpiercer, a story about class warfare aboard a super train going around the world in endless circles, is actually a stealthy sequel to that 1971 Gene Wilder starring classic Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Now, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds like a bad acid trip. But come with me, and you'll see a world of pure explanation as we break down this bonkers fan theory on The Dan Cave. First posited by comedian Kevin Mayer and expanded upon by YouTuber Rhino Stew, this theory sounds more ridiculous at first blush than the notion that schnozberries taste like schnozberries. Also, don't look up what Roald Dahl meant by that, it was pretty gross. But both of these people lay out a pretty compelling case for how this 1971 musical fantasy about an eccentric candy magnate and a 2013 post-apocalyptic thriller about people living on a high-speed train are actually quite interconnected. Now, both films are explorations of class structure, free will, and the notion of destiny. They both take place in a world starkly divided along economic lines and paint a bleak picture of class struggle. Charlie Bucket's family is so poor that all of his grandparents sleep in the same giant bed. Curtis and his fellow impoverished residents of Snowpiercer's caboose live in squalid conditions, working brutal hours and subsisting on gelatinous protein bars rather than sweet, delicious chocolate. Or, as Rhino Stew succinctly summarized it, both films are about a group of people who work their way through a fantastic structure full of unseen perils. One by one, someone's removed in each room until one person makes it to the very end. The last survivor then finds out this entire thing was a test because a wealthy industrialist needed to find a new successor. While Mayer points to the film's thematic similarities, Rhino Stew takes it one step further by claiming that these two are directly connected. The theory claims that Charlie Bucket, the lovable fresh-faced scamp who inherits Willy Wonka's expansive candy empire, grows up to become Wilford, the inventor of the titular supertrain in Snowpiercer and its perpetual motion engine that takes the last vestiges of humanity around the Earth, which has been ruined by climate change, on this never-ending voyage. In the year since he flew off into the sky in Willy Wonka's fabulous glass elevator, Charlie has reinvented himself in the tradition of his kooky mentor. This theory supposes that he adopted the name Wilford, perhaps something that Willy might have been short for, and he continues to brand everything in his sprawling corporate kingdom with a giant W. Most importantly, as the theory notes, he tries to uphold his predecessor's ideals of decadence and imagination. By 2014, Charlie, now Wilford, has transformed Wonka's candy company into one of the most powerful businesses on the planet. When the world governments released the gas known as CW7 to try and cool the planet to counteract global warming, he was uniquely suited to respond due to his experience with chemistry. Yeah, remember that? I didn't either, but it adds up. More importantly, Wilford was able to create the Snowpiercer because he'd been preparing to do so his entire life. Now, Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory wasn't just a state-of-the-art food production facility. It was also a hub for experimental modes of transportation. Think about it. That LSD boat, that weird bicycle car, even the glass elevator. More importantly, the factory is completely sealed off from the outside world, which means that Charlie/Wilford had the technology to create a self-sufficient mobile food factory capable of sustaining itself and others for years to come. Unfortunately, the stress of most of mankind going extinct drove Charlie/Wilford slightly insane, which would explain some of the extreme measures he took to ensure the survival of the human race. Now, just as Willy Wonka hid his golden tickets in chocolate bars to impel young Charlie to action, Wilford hid a message in a protein block to lead Curtis to him. And once their adventures began, our heroes learned some hard truths about secret ingredients in their favorite foods that were hard to swallow. For example, Willy Wonka used shoes in one of his confections, and the Snowpiercer train grinds up tons and tons of cockroaches to make the protein bricks that they feed to the poor. Same thing. Both Willy Wonka and Wilford also used spies. Willy Wonka's right-hand man, Mr. Wilkinson, moonlighted as the slimy Arthur Slugworth in an effort to deceive Charlie. And Wilford's closest ally, Gilliam, deceived Curtis by fomenting revolution at the back of the train to reduce the population to sustainable levels. Percentages, anyone? Looking at you, young Charlie.
Percentages.
Taking things one horrifying step further, Rhino Stu theorizes that Gilliam isn't just a new character, he's actually a much more aged version of Wilkinson. But wait, there's more. Charlie and Wilkinson aren't the only characters that this theory claims are familiar faces from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. In what's admittedly a huge leap of faith, this theory posits that Wilford's gun-toting assassin is the grown-up version of the gun-toting, television-obsessed child, Mike TV. And Tilda Swinton's crazy authority-loving bureaucrat Minister Mason is actually Veruca Salt, whose near-death encounter in the garbage chute left her traumatized, and now she's just deeply grateful to Wilford/Charlie for saving her life. And based on her combination of unsettling appetite, body type, and a love of sticky sweet substances, the child catcher Claude might be Augustus Gloop's daughter. No word on Violet Beauregarde though, maybe they had to eat her. She was a blueberry after all. By this point you're probably saying, yes, that's all well and good, but what about the Oompa Loompas? Well, I've got some bad news for you, Loompa-ticks. They went extinct. Whether it was the rapid cooling of the planet or the fact that they seemingly had no capacity for reproduction, the Oompa Loompas perished, which left Wilford with a huge problem, or rather, a small problem. Because if you recall in Snowpiercer, the train can only be operated by people who are very small in stature. So if Oompa Loompas went extinct somehow and Wilfred Wonka needed the next best thing, what would he use to keep his perpetual motion engine running? Children. Remember? Like in Snowpiercer, he's crazy. Now, speaking of children, that reminds me of another similarity between these two movies. Both Charlie and Curtis ate something that they probably shouldn't have. Well, Charlie had some of that fizzy lifting drink, and Curtis, well, he ate something else.
I know what people taste like.
But here's where things get a little different. While Charlie accepts Willy's offer to take over that chocolate factory, Curtis rejects Wilford's offer of taking over the Snowpiercer, and he crashes the train, burning down the system as we know it. But then, as Kevin Mayer eloquently puts it, both movies end with a hug and the notion that the children will carry us on into the future. So, is it a perfect theory? No, of course not. No fan theory is really perfect, otherwise it would be the movie. But are there a startling amount of similarities and some really fun ways to draw connections between these two? You bet your candy-loving butt there are. That was weird. But what do you think of this fan theory? Do you buy it, or do you think these creators are full of more hot air than Charlie and Grandpa Joe after chugging some of that forbidden fizzy lifting drink? You risked it all. Let me know in the comments below and give me an unexpectedly connected thumbs up while you're there. Now be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode, because if you don't, your friends will all think less of you, and you might not see next week's show about the story of how Billy Bob Thornton rounded up a bunch of deep core drillers and sent them into space to detonate a nuclear bomb on an asteroid before it hit the Earth. The only problem? They also have to get British rock legend Al Snow back in time for his gig in LA in Armageddon to the Greek. Until next time, keep on digging.